Rail Up, the Future Mobility podcast with innovators and leaders of the ecosystem. Presented by Sebastian Sperker.
My guest today is Giorgio Travaini, Executive Director of Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking, a major EU public-private partnership that funds and coordinates rail research and innovation. We will gain insights into the program, discuss the key challenges and new approaches, and look ahead to the next major step in ensuring Europe remains the global leader in rail. Let's begin our journey live from Brussels. Hi Giorgio, and welcome to Rail Up the podcast. As the audience already know, we start the session with the question, are you an innovator or rather a leader?
In this moment, a leader.
Okay. Very straightforward answer. And today we are diving into Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking. I think for those who don't know, the largest collaborative innovation program in the rail sector, and it brings together operators, infrastructure managers, industry leaders and innovators to develop the technology that could transform rail. But beyond the vision and the flagship projects, we will ask the real question, what's working, what's not, which innovation are making the difference, and where are the barriers to adaptation. And looking back at this journey, what has been, Giorgio, surprisingly easy on your way with the program, and what was the single biggest roadblock you didn't see coming?
Well, thank you, Sebastian. First of all, as you heard from my previous answer, I was hesitating between innovators and leader, but why I mentioned leader? Because we are not the one, I'm not the one innovating. Actually, in Europe's rail, the ones that are innovating are the different rail companies and institutions that are implementing our research and innovation program. So I haven't found anything actually very surprisingly easy or very surprisingly difficult. I have to say that everything was quite as I was expecting in terms of difficulties, because what we have it's a coordination between very different sector stakeholders and very different countries with different needs and different visions. So getting them all together around the same, let's say, idea and vision, it's not something trivial, and I knew that from the beginning. So this is what let's say wasn't so much surprising. At the end, also, we deliver what we wanted, and this was good. In Shift2Rail, we made something like about 700 prototype testing, and we developed about 70 solution, and also this is continuing in Europe's rail, so we are delivering as expected. Maybe also, something that I wouldn't say we have underestimated, but we actually realize the difficulty right now is to bridge the gap between the end of the innovation and the market uptake. So going towards full deployment, it's very difficult, because this implies a change of operational rules in some cases. It implies a change of structure. It implies also looking into financial compensation mechanisms, because some of our innovations benefit at system level, so maybe some actors, but there are other actors that need to bear the cost. So this is also, let's say, one of the difficulties that we see now coming, and I think this will be also something that we need to solve in our next chapter.
What do you see as the biggest challenge? Are we lacking in good ideas and bold visions, or are we simply struggling to bring innovation from the lab onto the tracks?
Yeah, I think, as I said, rather more the second one. I think a good idea there are. So the challenge, I think, is transform those good idea in something implementable. That's the first challenge. And then the second challenge is, once you have transformed on something implementable, how do you implement it efficiently and effectively in a time, in a sector which is quite fragmented, in the sense it's fragmented both from a technical perspective, so you need to take into account different technical migrations across Europe, but also from, let's say, operations as well. It's not the same way how railways are operated across Europe. So also this needs to be taken into account.
So true. And actually, what I would be quite interesting, I mean, the whole program started actually in the European Union about, let's say, the Green Deal from this perspective. But today, like the focus, I would say, like changed heavily to defense, readiness, resilience, and how this geopolitical shifted the program in the internal roadmap.
Well, let me say that the fundamentals have not changed, in the sense that rail is still the most sustainable transport mode. When you look at the greenhouse emission, we only count 0.4%, but we have a much greater modal share. So the best way, let's say, not only to decarbonize, but also to be more energy efficient, is to transport by rail. And energy efficiency is also part of an industrial strategy as well. Digitalization, which was and still is our second driver, is still one of the main driver. And actually, with all the advancement on artificial intelligence and automation, it's clearly something that gained traction. And then about resilience, actually there, we already had the demonstration that rail is, again, a sustainable transport mode and a resilient transport mode. Unfortunately, already during the pandemic, during COVID, thanks to rails, the goods were able to be transported across Europe. We also adapted the program a little bit related to that. And I think now, in the context of the current geopolitical context, clearly we're reflecting more to the next program, how we are going to, let's say, address with more intensity the resilient aspect. But still today, our program embed, for example, with the digitalization, cybersecurity elements that will be fundamental for a resilient rail system. So de facto, per se, the program did not change significantly, because from the beginning, we were already touching most of the subjects.
Okay, so basically this cyber sabotage movement, like this was already like integrated in the program.
Yes.
Okay. And you just mentioned before, like what is the outlook? So when the next program will start and the current program will end?
So the current program is expected, the current joint undertaking is expected to end in 2031, but the current funding, so the last call that we will launch, the last call for research and innovation proposal, will be launched next year. So it means that if everything goes well and the decision maker will decide to renew the joint undertaking under the new multi-annual financial framework of the European Union, it means that we could theoretically start with a new funding stream and a new program, obviously, from 2028.
Let's jump to one of the flagship projects, the digital automatic coupling, or simple the DAC. And few topics polarize the rail sector as much as the DAC. Some see it as the biggest leap in rail freight efficiency in decades, while others fear that the costs are simply too high and that large-scale implementation will be extremely difficult. So where do you stand in this debate?
First of all, I think this fear in general is totally legitimate, because at the end, when you do a change, you never know how this change is affecting the different player, especially if it's a system change. And this is a system change. And that's why we're going step by step towards its possible realization. First of all, we needed to get the technology right, and this is what in Europe's Rail we're doing. But in parallel, also looking into the economics. The economics are at two levels. It's economics at union level, but then economics for each stakeholder. So what is the business case? If there are inequality, obviously there is also the legislator that will need to look into some sort of compensation mechanism. And let's not forget that putting DAC on the truck, on the train, on the wagons, on the local, it's a matter of increasing the competitiveness of rail freight, because DAC is an enabler. And if we increase the competitiveness of rail freight, we reduce the externalities and we increase, let's say, the public good. So that could be also potentially intervention from the public in terms of support, including to the small operator, to make this transition. So for the moment, all of this is not yet finalized, because as I said, the first step is to get the technology right. And the second step is to demonstrate that those systemic benefits that we think are there are actually there in commercial condition. And that's why today there are the so-called the Pioneer Train that will be running for a couple of years in commercial condition, to demonstrate and maybe highlight the elements that needs to be addressed to ensure that all business cases can be addressed.
All right, so the Pioneer trains will demonstrate the DAC under real operating conditions. But when do you expect the regular rollout to begin across Europe's rail network?
What we are thinking is that we could have, after the Pioneer train, a gradually, let's say, take up of the DAC. So these could happen from the 2030s, and then continue to move on. Initially, we thought about also to estimate, let's say, the big impact and the scale of the migration. We initially thought of a big bang type of migration, but obviously this is not set in stone. And what we are currently also investigating is what is the best way actually to make a migration that maybe is a phase type of migration. But it's clear that today the digital automatic coupling is not a compatible technology with the manual coupling. And so a transition period needs to be thought and managed, and this transition period needs to be as short as possible, because we don't want to disrupt the business. On the contrary, we want to make it better.
But a general question, I think I think everyone would agree that to say like that's really, as you said, it's like a system change and not just to do something a little bit different, to have an upgrade. But we also see that especially our big railway undertakings, but also from infrastructure manager perspective, etc., and regulations. So that the different countries in the European Union has a different pace in doing that. And I can imagine, I think that's also a really big challenge, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And that's the reason why, by the way, we set up initially the European DAC delivery program, because we knew that this will be one of the biggest challenges, the implementation and deployment, and making sure that there is a certain level of coordination. And just recently, we also moved the European DAC delivery program into a new group that we set up in Europe's Rail, which is the deployment group. Because DAC is clearly a transformative technology or a system change type of technology, but there are others. For example, the sector will need to implement the new radio mobile communication system. And let's say the implementation challenges somehow are also similar. So we need also to look into all those type of investments at system level, maybe also a bit in a coordinated way, or at least having some lessons learned from the different transition period. For example, we will need authorization that it's quite lean.
Let's move to one of my favorite topics, autonomous or highly automated driving in rail. we're seeing major progress in the automotive sector where high levels of autonomous driving are getting closer to reality. And at the same time, a great deal of research is also underway in the rail, particularly around the automatic train operation, in short ATO, at the grades automation 3 and 4. How important is this project within the program and where we are currently heading? And which projects do you consider as the most exciting or ambitious one?
Well, first of all, because you're making the comparison with the automotive, we are already there in rail, because in the metro system you have ATO GOA4 already up and running since several years. And then maybe somebody will say, okay, but why you're taking so long for the open network? Well, the open network, as I said, it's an open network, so the constraints are multiple. And but what we have already done is that we already finalized the specifications, which are also in the TSI of the grade of automation 2, which is already, let's say, making rail much more performant, both in terms of capacity, but also in terms of energy management. You still have the driver. And now what we are finalizing are the specification, and let's not forget our specification not that works only on one single case, a specification that needs to work across Europe. And that's a standard. There will not be a tailor-made solution. It's only one of grade of automation 3-4, potentially also without the need of a driver. For this, what is important is to have, fail-safe systems that can detect obstacles and that can react. But we're also looking into fallback type of mode, including remote type of controlling. And what is already happening today is that in Czech Republic, you have a railway line which already operates in the grade of automation 4 without a driver, of which, let's say, the specifications and technologies comes from the development of Europe's rail. So these are the early deployments, and now we needed to standardize all of that. There are also different tests that have been done in Netherlands, in Germany, and all across Europe. Now the matter is to come into a finalization and having then fully specified.
Of course, we can't directly compare the autonomous driving on the road with autonomous rail because trains run on fixed tracks and so they can simply not steer around the obstacles, and because of their very long braking distance, they rely heavily on signaling and centralized traffic management, and that's actually the fundamental difference and the fundamental challenge. But this brings me to another question. We often associate highly automated train operations with ETCS. But in Europe has thousands of secondary and regional lines, which are crucial for both the passenger services and the first and last mile also for freight. And many of these lines won't receive ETCS for quite some time. So how do you see the future for automation on these regional lines? Are there alternative approaches that could bring the benefits of automation without waiting for the full ETCS rollout?
Yes. Actually, also there we thought about it, and we developed some demonstrations as well of ATO over legacy system over ETCS lines. So the idea, although, and let me be clear on it, is not to extend the lifetime of legacy system, because at a certain point also those lines will need to migrate over ETCS. Our aim is also to make ETCS as much as cost effective so that the migration can be sustained in a quicker way. But in the meantime, we need to ensure the transition. So we also worked on solutions that are fully ETCS compatible, but they can be used with those regional lines if are requested by the operators. So it's actually thought about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but to sum it up, how is your mood or your feeling about a bit progress in high automated driving on rail?
I think it has use cases. I don't think we will see a massive adoption in a short time frame. So there, we have demonstrated that the biggest, let's say, the biggest case comes from, for example, punctuality or and the saving energy. This is already made possible with graded automation too. What we see in graded automation 3.4, a lot of movement that can be automatized when going into the shops, in the yards, and all of that, where you don't, well, you want to automatize as much as possible, including with remote controls. And then, let's say on the running, I think we need for some technologies also still to come. For example, one of them is the so-called FRMCS that will allow a higher bandwidth of communication between the ground and the train, which today the GSM-R doesn't have. And so to go really driverless type of system, you needed to have additional bandwidth that today with GSM-R you don't have.
How far we are with this a rollout?
Of FRMCS?
Yeah.
So the specification has not been developed in this case in Europe's rail. They have been developed by the sector within the UIC program. What we have done in Europe's rail, we're currently taking those specifications that now are about to be finalized, following also an agreement with the sector. And in Europe's rail, we're validating them through a series of tests. So we're actually making train running with the prototypes and ensuring that those specifications are actually okay. If not, obviously it's a feedback loop and we need to revise the specifications. When those are adopted, when those are confirmed, the idea will be to adopt them into the technical specification for interoperability, TSI, and this will happen in a couple of years or so. And once this is happening, gradually, also there will be a migration from GSM-R to FRMCS. But also there, this gradual migration needs to be staged similarly to the DAC. Why? Because also GSM-R is decommissioning. So the supply industry is not maintaining anymore GSM-R unless of private arrangement to extend a little bit its lifetime. But we already know that GSM-R will not be maintained for a longer period by the supplier.
Let's move to another topic that always comes up when we talk about introducing new technologies. You've already touched on the DAC, and I think the same applies for FRMCS and many other innovations, and that's homologation and approval. Developing new technology is the one thing, but getting it approved and deployed across European rail networks is often the real challenge. The process can take, years or require significant time, resources, and coordination. Do you see actually a progress in making homologation and approval faster? Are there any initiatives on the horizon that give you confidence we can bring innovations to the market much more quickly in the future?
Yes. Well, first of all, the authorization is in the hand of the European Union Agency for Railway, with whom Europe's Rail is collaborating and providing feedback. And just to give you one example, for this mass retrofit or mass type of authorization for those transition program that we're seeing, we are providing and working together with the agency and providing recommendation of where the costs are for the sector. Because then the agency can also focus on a strategy on how to make sure that authorization are linear and focused on where the costs lie. And for example, we gave recently to the agency a report on where we see the main authorization cost related to FRMCS. This is one example. So it will be a mass retrofit that needs to happen. And I would say, looking forward, in the near future, I think and also in the medium future, I think if the sector is getting more and more together and the innovation becomes more and more European, more and more modular, more and more using the system architecture that Europe's rail has developed, the less difficulties there will be with the authorization, simply because the variant will be reduced. And it is the aim of what we would like to do also in our next program, is to simplify as much as possible the rail system in its operations, in its technical architecture, so that we can get more standardization, more similar approaches. And if we get these, obviously authorization, it's easier because you have a less variant. And our idea will be also to work a little bit with activities that today we're not doing, which we call pre-deployment. So before deploying it, trying to find all those barriers, including, let's say, authorization, if you want, that breaks a little bit the implementation into the market and remove them. And so with pre-deployment, I also see a greater engagement maybe on the European Union agency to pre-validate future authorization, so that then when it's the time to make the step into the market, everything will go smoothly.
I think probably there is even a need to do so, because I think in Europe, the industry, the rail industry, it's global market leader. But and I think that's really something good. But we also see that especially Asia and also US is catching up quite fast. What we need to do actually really to keep like the leader in our industry.
Yeah, first of all, your assessment is right. If you look especially to China, they are investing big amounts of research and innovation and research and development into rail. They have system and an ecosystem that support exports, and we need therefore to face that. Today, the rail industry is still leading worldwide. But if we want to maintain this leadership, this global leadership, investments of innovation is the only way forward. And it's not only investment of innovation, but approaching it, trying to use Europe as its real single market. So today, unfortunately, if you look at what operating companies and authorities are asking to the suppliers, are at the end very small batches of new equipments, new assets, and all of them are somehow with different requirements. So this leads to an industry that does have a big base in Europe, but it's a big base that is fragmented and not standardized. So I think what we can do to support that is to go more and more, as I mentioned before, towards standardized type of solution, so that the market also for our industry, it's really Europe, and then they can leverage from it when they are exporting abroad. And that's why, by the way, in what we are proposing in Europe's rail as the next chapter, so the new rail joint undertaking, which is not a given, it's something that today is just, let's say, a ask, if you want, from all the members of Europe's rail. Then the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council will need to decide, is to significantly raise the bar with more budget on research and innovation, basically doubling the size of Europe's rail today.
What is doubling? I think what is the budget of this
today
program?
Europe's rail is about 1.2, 1.3 billion euros of research and innovation. Half is coming from the union and half is coming from the private sector. So it's to go with 3 billion euros for research and innovation. And the reason for doubling it's because we needed to cover the gap between the legacy system and the new systems that we want to create. And maybe we needed to do something that we never did before, and develop some type of adapter type of solutions for each country, so that the migration into the new system is actually happening. Well, not only faster, but is actually happening. And they require quite a lot of R&D investment. And then the other bit is 15 billion euros that has been put on the table for these pre-deployment activities. So how do we address the gap between the end of the prototypes being validated and tested and the actual market rollout? It's the so-called valley of death, and this is where we need to ensure that industrialization works and it's possible. We needed to make sure that we have a solid authorization system for migrating quickly. We needed to de-risk as much as possible so that operating companies and infrastructure manager can actually buy off-the-shelf solutions and not the project. So the risk is there, et cetera, et cetera. And for this, the idea would be to use a new instrument of the European Union, which is called the European Competitiveness Funds. Why I'm mentioning this? Because this Competitiveness Fund, it's actually there to accelerate the scale up, to accelerate the adoption of this. And indeed, it is linked about maintaining also this global leadership.
In this podcast, we also want to learn a bit more about our guests. Can you just give us a short story of yourself and how you entered into ecosystem of rail?
I've been working in the past in the different fields, and then I had an interesting experience in the European Parliament, where I was assisting the chair of the Transport Committee in the European Parliament, and so I started to have a good insight of all the transport modes and policy. And from there, it was clear that rail, well, at least to me, rail it's the most sustainable transport mode, and the one where I thought it's worth to dedicate some energy into. And this is how, at the end, I enter into the rail sector. And I also discovered very quickly that public funds from the European Union were coming to the rail sector in a kind of uncoordinated manner, or not so much structured like it is today. And so I try to push for making sure that Europe's budget, it's well spent, it's taxpayer money. And I think with Europe's Rail and Shift2Rail before that, we show that we're making very good use of public funds.
And on a more personal note, what do you enjoy most about your job and what keeps you motivated every day?
So what I like most is, the ability to move rail forward. Okay, so what I really enjoy is the possibility to discuss with very different stakeholders, as I mentioned, with their very different need, and at the end, being able to find, you see, the common line that make all the sector advancing. I think this is what I enjoy most.
Okay. That sounds great. And if you just have to pick one project, what was, like, I would not say crazy, but what was a super project which is maybe mind-blowing or just not on our agenda? Is there someone you said, wow, surprised you quite a lot that this is also part of the program and it's mind-blowing, or this kind of stuff?
Well, mind-blowing, I would not say. At the end, are all activities that sum up one with each other to make sure that, again, rail become more and more competitive. I think there is one technology that we're developing that it's really interesting because it shows the potential to make greater use of the existing assets without investing a lot on it. For example, is the moving block. I mean, it's a technology we're discussing since a long time, but a moving block, in a way, you know, is a technology, especially coupled with other type of technology, like innovative braking system and virtual coupling, for example. When you couple several of those technologies together, you can see really the future of how rail could be operated. Now, easier to say than done, because a system with all this technology needs to be operated in a very different way than how it is operated today. And this is, this deployment and change of the way how we're operating the rail system is also a bigger challenge.
Okay. And maybe this leads to my last question of the podcast. It's how you envision rail in 2050.
Well, first of all, more rail, a rail system where you can see on the track more train than today, one train after the other, and in contrast with the motorway, because today is the opposite. And beside that, I see a railway system that is clearly highly automated, highly efficient, and also more European.
Those are wonderful closing words. I especially like your vision of a railway network with so many trains that it almost looks congested, but in reality everything is flowing efficiently. And as we like to emphasize in every episode of Rail Up, rail remains the greenest and most sustainable way to move both passengers and freight. Giorgio, it has been a real pleasure having you on my podcast. Thank you very much for sharing insights into Europe's rail joint undertaking and your vision for the future of rail. And we look forward to seeing many of these projects move from research into reality.
Thank you very much, Sebastian.
What is the contribution to drive climate change?
In enabling the rail system to cooperate and to be better and to have more rail on the network.
The ball is in your court. What is the next step to drive change?
The next step is about investment done at European Union level, together with all the countries, together with all the stakeholders.
Which superhero do we need to avoid the climate disaster?
We need the Flash because it uses electrical energy exactly like the rail system, and we needed to move fast.
What's the takeaway from this episode?
My biggest takeaway from this episode is that Europe's shift in focus from the Green Deal to defense isn't a departure from rail. It's actually a perfect fit. Resilience, safety and reliability have always been at the heart of the railway sector, making rail a key enabler of Europe's future. We also heard that one of the greatest challenges is no longer generating innovation but implementing it, turning great ideas into solutions that are deployed across Europe's rail network is now a central priority of the program. However, I was surprised that the previous program delivered over 700 prototype tests and 70 innovative solutions. Another key message is that innovation needs to reach market faster. That means accelerating homologation and approval processes through a close coordination between European institutions such as ERA and national authorities. Innovation can only deliver its full value when new technologies are approved and deployed consistently across Europe, not country by country. Perhaps the most inspiring message is that Europe's rail joint undertaking brings together the strengths of public and private partners with a shared ambition to drive world-class research and innovation and ensure that Europe's rail sector remains the global benchmark. That bold vision perfectly captures the spirit of Rail Up.
This podcast connects innovators and leaders worldwide to shape the future ecosystem of rail. Rail Up by Sebastian Sperker.